September 6, 2025, the Pickens County Museum in South Carolina had some very special guests show up and a very special show. We had Eric Williams of 96 to your far left. We had Stephen Huffman portraying General Andrew Pickens, David Gillespie, me, the soldier of the 2nd South Carolina Regiment, and then Charlie Rollins and Karen Williamson of the 18th century settlers, as well as Bill Williamson Militia, Don Bruton, who portrayed James Beamer and his Cherokee wife. The show, entitled Firelocks of the American Revolution, was a display of the rifles and muskets of Ken Nabors. Ken is also a sponsor of this channel and was awarded several awards this evening, so we'll begin with the ceremony.
Bill Williams, no different. Give you a little nomenclature about what you see in there. Most of y'all probably already know about. We call them today Flintlocks, but back in their day, they did not call them Flintlocks. They called them Firelocks. So hence the name that we have here, Firelocks of the American Revolution. If you talk to them about a flintlock today, if they came back, like we have some visitors from our past, we have proud to have General Pickens here tonight, tell you about the weapons and how they function. And we had thought about, and we practiced last week doing the live firing in here so you could see the fire and smoke and get the idea of what it was. But these old brick walls are so old, that bullet, instead of flattening out, it bounced around in here 3 or 4 times, and Nick said, no, you might hit somebody. So we won't do a lot of firing in here tonight, since we have so many people here. So I'll shut up and let our expert.
We're armed differently, and we have things that help us in different ways. I represent a militia soldier in the upper 96th Regiment out of the Long Canes. I'm dressed in how I would be wearing what I wore every day. As a planter, as a farmer, as my vocation, I'm tending to my farm. As a militia soldier, we're called upon what your present-day National Guard does, where you call them weekend warriors, but we were all called into militia service. So you, between the ages of 16 and 60, you're required to serve a term in the militia. My ancestors served, all 3 of my ancestors from that region served under Andrew Pickens in the militia. So I'm armed and my accoutrements from that period, everything that I would have had at the farm at the time. You'll see in just a minute, Private Gillespie here is a little bit different, but it's a firelock. To me, this was a tool I used at the farm. If I needed to hunt game, that's what I used it for. No different than an axe or a pick or a shovel, whatever tool I needed. We looked at this as a tool, but it was also used for protection. We were dealing with Indian raids down in the Long Canes, and when the British came through and the Loyalist neighbors, they had to be called to protect us. Smooth rifle. It's a very utilitarian weapon. By that I mean it's like a modern day Fowler. I can shoot a round ball, I can shoot birdshot. If it came down to it and ran out of ammunition, I could shoot rocks and nails. It won't damage this. I hope I don't have to do that. But it would not damage anything like I had of a rifle. But it's a very utilitarian weapon. It's easy to clean. And as Ken talked about, we get a lot of our nomenclature from this. Lock, stock, and barrel. This is our lock. This is our stock. And this is our barrel. The principles of flint and steel, if you're in scouts and know what flint and steel does when you strike it, it creates a spark. This is the frizzen. You close it, and it creates a spark. To load this, it takes a little bit of a sequence of practice, and as what you'll see later, but with the rifle and the smooth rifle, it takes a little bit more involved because we don't have the modern conveniences that they did as a military that were provided. So I carried everything I needed with me to load my weapon, to care for my weapon, to make any repairs in a shot bag. I carried a supply of powder in my powder horn. Every rifle was a specific size and required a specific size of ball. Now they say, lead can kill you, and it can. Holding it's not going to bother me too much, but it can do damage. But this would be provided, I can kill case a certain amount of powder charge, of black powder, to fire this weapon. I probably got about 65, 70 grains. So what I would do is I would pour enough powder in here to the top of this powder measure. I have to prime the pan. So I have my powder in here. I pour a little bit of priming powder in here. Actually, I'd probably mostly use my horn because that'd be quicker. I could load my horn, the powder measure. I close this frizzy, keeps the powder from falling out. I'm at half cock, so it's not going to fire. I then take my powder measure after I filled it. I've already turned it upside down, but you get it. I pour my powder down the barrel. I then have to have a piece of linen patch right here on my bag. For today's convenience, I just cut off a piece. What you do, take your patch and your ball, place it on there. The patch provides a very tight seal and seats that ball down in the barrel. So once it's in there, take out my rammer, ram that charge, that ball all the way down bottom of the barrel, the breech. I return this, and I'm ready to fire. Okay? Again, I'm at half cock. So when a command was given as a militiaman, ready, aim, fire, I'm at the ready now. So I go into position, aim, fire. A charge would discharge a spark into the pan, causing a spark to engage powder in the breech, creating a compression that would pull the ball, the musket ball, down out of the barrel, down to its intended target. So my rifle is probably battle. You may fire once or twice, because as a militia soldier, I'm going behind and ducking behind cover. I'm shooting and running, retreating and going behind cover. We use those tactics to our advantage here in the southern colleges, especially the backcountry of South Carolina. The structure of this whole stock is different. You'll notice this has a very thin wrist. So this would not be good to use as a club or to bash somebody with. It would break. Then I'm not going to be able to fire anymore. If I don't return my ramrod back to its place and leave it in the barrel and forget it, it's going to go down range and I won't be able to load my rifle. That has happened. That happened quite a bit. The opposing target sees something swirling down after them. So then I'd have to go to other weapons.
Well, piggybacking along with what my friend Bill just told you, I represent more of a soldier of the 2nd South Carolina Regiment. The Continental line was more a professional soldier, and they would have received pay, and as opposed to the militiaman who would have been more just on a as needed basis kind of thing. The 2nd South Carolina Regiment was formed up in the Low State down in Charleston, and I actually had one of my ancestors fought in the 4th South Carolina Continental line, and I actually had plenty of militia up here with some of Bill's ancestors in the 96th District back in the 18th century as well. But the difference is mainly between the guns. So one thing that to describe just the parts and pieces of these arms, this is what we call the butt plate today. Back in the 18th century, this was called the butt piece. And this is the comb, this is the toe. Same, Bill's toe is a little sharper, mine's a little more rounded. This is a Charleville musket that is from France. So the French want to get ours from the British because we were at war with them. It was a conflict of interest. So the Americans loved this arm so much that even after the Revolution, George Washington set up 2 armories in this country, one for the northern colonies, one for the southern colonies. The one up north is at Springfield, Massachusetts. Have any of y'all ever been to the Springfield, Massachusetts Armory before? Up in their armory down in Virginia. So that one was burned in the 1860s, but it's still there, the foundations of it, and they have a great site there as well. But the armories that Washington established in this country basically used this arm to produce our first weapons in this country in the 1790s, I think, right, Ken? Of the Harper's Ferry weapon.
While he's talking about Charleville, not to interrupt him, that's important for you, and you might want to take some close-up pictures. when you see the U.S. Army crossed rifles today, whether it's on a sign at a fort, or if you see a veteran that has the crossed rifles on his uniform, that is the gun. If you had it in detail, it's for several reasons. The French Charleville was introduced to the French soldiers in 1719. Minutemen didn't have it. He wrote the first military specification for the U.S. Army for the ammunition, and it was the 69 caliber smooth bore. And Washington added that it makes it more effective to call it a ball and buck, which means you had one round ball and 3 buckshot coming at you. You had 4 pieces of lead going down range every time they pulled the weapon. George Washington wrote those specifications. They still existed even all the way to 1842. And ball and buck was used even during the war between the Americans and the Yankees. Soldiers, the country boys or city boys, when the drill sergeants were telling them how to train them to use their weapon, when they said cock, they knew exactly where to put their hand. So, and we put it on half cock. That's where that term going off half cock, because you'll see when David demonstrates loading, he's going to be he's going to prime that pin, and if that sear pin is wore, it'll go off right in his face or fingers. So that's where the term going off half cock, bad result. But that was the difference between them and the Minutemen not priming until they got ready to fire. Double envelopment, and you say they were surrounded completely. The first double envelopment done in history was by Hannibal at the Battle of Cannae. The first one in this continent was done by Morgan at Cowpens. Double envelopment, which they completely surround all the troops all the way around. And you'll see when it says that, it says the American soldiers started defeating them in detail. Now what does that mean? Defeating in detail? It's just a polite way of saying they killing them all. No prisoners. They give them Tarquin's quarter, which Tarquin had slaughtered them at the Waxhaw. So we said, we're going to give you the same. We have to.
You don't want it to fire. So the lock is what's on the front here, and that has the cock, as Ken was describing. This part is the frizzen, and that's what the flint strikes into and sends off a shower of sparks down into the pan. The pan is like a little bowl that you put the priming powder in, and so you put the priming powder in there from the cartridge. So my cartridge box here holds 28 rounds, so that should keep you busy for a little while. So you take the cartridge, you tear it off a little bit, put a little pinch of powder in the pan, flip the frizzen forward like that. Now the powder is captured inside of the pan. And so then I'll take the rest of the cartridge and I'll pour the powder down the pan, down in the muzzle, and then I'll put the ball or the bucking ball, as it was Ken was describing there, then I'll charge it down with the ramrod, and then it will literally fire that thing out and throw a paper wad all across the field. And after these events are over, you'll see paper laying everywhere. That's because they're coming out of here. Masses of men in a field, shoulder to shoulder, facing another mass of men shoulder to shoulder. So when they would go to fire, they would actually not be necessarily aiming for a person. They were just aiming for volley fire. With a musket, but with a rifle, on the other hand, they were actually looking for particular people. This rifle, I don't think, but it is an attractive firearm. The best thing about the Charleville is it has these musket bands right here. So in the field, I can quickly push the spring and take that band off, take that band off, take that band off, and with my turn screw, which is the screwdriver, take off the bolt here, the lock bolt. Then I can take that barrel out and clean it out rather quickly. Whereas with a rifle, you have to get a pin and a punch and punch these out, and it's a little more time consuming, so they're a little more dainty. The rifle typically weighs around 9 to 12 pounds, whereas a rifle may be 8 to 9 pounds. So this is heavier, more cumbersome, so thus you'll see military arms with straps a lot of time just because they're beasts. You know, you gotta be a man to carry these things around. You know, on these, you can just cart them over the fold of your arm like that, and they're a little more dainty, but they're a lot more attractive. And they actually will shoot up to 200 yards. A man can be taken down pretty comfortably at 100 yards, possibly up to 200 yards, even on the 4th South Carolina Regiment was outfitted by the Middletons and the Rutledges down in the Low State. And so their coat of arms would have had this crescent on top of their skull cap, is what this is called. And so when General Moultrie, who became the governor of South Carolina later on, he decided in 1775 that he needed a flag for his troops. So he took the crescent right off of the skull caps off of his regiment, put it into a blue flag up in the upper dexter corner, he described it. That became our South Carolina flag. There was no palmetto on it until 1860. So as you go through the exhibit, you'll see one of those flags completely dyed with indigo because we're South Carolinians and we like our indigo. You'll see the blue flag with that crescent that came off of the caps and the flag. And so as one, I just wanted to say that I've known Ken Nabors now for at least 26 years. I think we met in 1999.
You were just a baby.
So we met in the 90s, the 1990s. And I'm glad that you could see Ken a little bit and get, if you don't know him, that you got to see him just for a moment. He's very fiery. Have you noticed that? He gets all wound up, he gets so fiery, and it's good. You know, when I was a kid, this is the kind of conversations I found with Ken continuously, you know. And I learned more from this guy here about a little bit of everything really quick when I was a lot younger. And I like to describe Ken as a historical philanthropist. He loves to take his wealth of knowledge, his information, his resources, and he loves to teach history. And I think you got to see just a little bit of that here today.
Yep.
So, and then as you go through the gallery, most of the rifles that you'll see on display, not the muskets, but the rifles, were made by this guy here, Don Bruton. I met him about 3 years later, and Don is also a historical philanthropist. He has taken and invested in me. Both of these men here, when I was a kid, took me under their wing and really invested in me as a young country punk from Pumpkin Town. And I believe that I'm who I am today as a historian because of Don Bruton, Ken Nabors, and when you got both of these two together, what they produced is what you see in this gallery today. These men are very special men and are products right here of Pickens County, and I just love both of these guys very much. And this is a testimony to Don's craftsmanship as you appreciate these rifles. There's no musket on earth that'll ever take the beauty of what he's got in his hand there, is old Hannah. Hannah is the most beautiful gun I've ever seen, and its simplicity, it's beautiful, its lines. It actually won the Best Gunmakers Fair Dixon's in Pennsylvania in 1997, I think. And that's the best gun show in the country, and that won Best of Show. So before you leave, grab Don over there and get a look at Hannah, okay? Thank you. Yes. Charge a man down like that, and you see you're coming and charging a line of soldiers, 1,000 of these pointing straight out, glistening. Part of the factor of the bayonet is that glistening effect. When you're out in the sunlight and you see those things pointing out and you're charging a line of guys with 1,000 of these pointing at you, it does something to you right here. It's morale. It's bad for morale. So now with the rifle, you didn't have that luxury. There was no way. So if I'm bragging,
The battle was due to edged weapons. It was one-on-one combat, hand-to-hand, and it was either with a knife or tomahawk for militia soldiers. There was something called a plug bayonet. It was a forged blade on a wooden peg, and it would fit in the barrel. And as we get older, we've got to impart that upon the young people. We've got to show them, just like what Kim was talking about, knowing who your ancestors are. I was fortunate growing up. My mother's family was from the Long Canes, so I grew up hearing about my 3 patriot ancestors. That name stuck with me my entire life. Those names stuck with me my entire life. I've told our son about that. He's 25 years old. He may not be interested in that. He is interested in it, but it will come back to you. History comes back to you. But the young people here, where's Charlie? Charlie, he's such an inspiration to see him. That's our future, folks. And if we don't impart what these gentlemen have taught us and share that with them, we're losing this history. We're losing the valuable history of South Carolina. I grew up in Georgia. But I came to school in South Carolina. South Carolina was always like a second home because my ancestors have been here since 1760. I love this state more than any place I can think of to raise my son, my wife I met here. But history is important, and so much gets lost in today's times, and it's looked down upon. No matter what period of history, there's something that we can learn from that. But Don Bruton, a true craftsman, he built my rifle, and he's the one who has inspired me. Ken as well. You go to visit him, it's not a short visit, because he's sharing things that he's learned along the way. But it's a community and it's family.
I'm here tonight, and if you live in Pickens County, we would absolutely love for you to come be a part of the Pickens County 250 committee. You get to learn all kinds of history, and he's right, if we don't teach our children, who will? And I have sat under this young man right here the very first the very first time I met him was because I wanted to build a float for Veterans Parade. And somebody said, you need to ask Ken Nabors to be on that float. Well, I didn't know Ken Nabors from Adam. He was the first person that agreed to ride that float, and it was so wonderful, wasn't it?
It was
Yeah.
good.
I've got a picture of him, and he was wearing that uniform on that float, and we had somebody from every war that America had been in at that time outfitted in a uniform, and it was amazing. But it was because of him. He was my impetus to get started. So, and he also is the one that got me to be the chair of the Pickens County 250. And our state regent couldn't be here tonight with us, the DAR state regent, but we want to present you with a certificate, and it reads as follows. The National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, 1776 to 2026, DAR America 250 Commendation, presented to Ken Nabors for I don't have my glasses on.
Demonstration of extraordinary effort in raising awareness of revolutionary patriots and America's 250th anniversary.
I'm gonna tell you what, doesn't that sum him up?
Yes.
On behalf, will you hold this, because our state regent wants to see me giving that to you. She said she was sorry she couldn't be here.
She'll take care of it.
And I was proudly presented to Ken Nabors for the years of dedication in preserving and promoting American history. And this is from the Pickens County 250 Committee.
Those are ways that go hand and stop. Seven are still doing good. Yeah. We're gonna have tunnels in the former plant. Yes, sir. Dixie good or you know how to use it.
We would like to thank Joy Evans for all the work that she did in putting on this show and for arranging these materials. I'd like to thank Nick as well, the curator of the Pickens County Museum, for his efforts in hanging all of this. I'd like to thank Wayne Kelly as well for all the hard work and effort that he put into this show. Thanks also to Carolyn Nations of the SC 250 and everyone who dressed out, and especially thanks to the Lord. Thanks so much for watching, y'all.